You're listening to Sky News ClimateCast, and today we're all about heating from coal mines. You might say, what's so green about that? I thought we wanted to use less coal. This is actually about using old coal mines. Beneath my feet, here in the northeast, in Gateshead, they're using the heat from that mine to warm local homes and businesses. And it's all going on underneath this rather mundane manhole cover. You can hear it there beneath my feet. There are 2 or 3 of them here, another few about 20 metres away from me. And what they're doing is bringing up water that is much warmer than the ambient temperature, and they're flowing that into a heat exchanger. But what's really interesting about this is it's taking the infrastructure of the old fossil fuel economy and making it into something for the 21st century green economy. There aren't any working deep coal mines left in the UK, so to get a better understanding of how it might work, I've come to the Beamish Living Museum, which tells the story of life in northeast England. And as mining was a big part of that life, they've got an old coal shaft here, an old seam. And as you can probably hear, it's very damp. In fact, the dripping noises you can hear are water just seeping out of the walls, out of the ceiling, out of the top of this shaft, and puddling and pooling on the floor. The shaft itself is pretty low. I keep bumping my head and my helmet on the roof, and this water is vital to the story, because pretty much all coal mines, when they're actually being dug and the coal is being extracted, they have to be constantly pumped to keep the water out. So the moment you abandon them, particularly the deeper ones, the water comes in pretty rapidly. And I'm here with Charlotte Adams and Richard Bond from the Coal Authority. Charlotte, I'll start with you. Describe how these old coal mines could be part of our energy future.
So we've got a vast resource. We've got 23,000 disused coal mines, and they are now flooded with water, and we can tap into that and use it as a source of heat, which provides a low carbon future source of heat in coalfield areas.
Now, as we stop talking here, we can hear the water dripping. So water and coal mines go together. When they're active, it's a problem, but now it's an asset.
It is. We know we've chosen these as a target because we know that mines used to flow water. The miners had to manage the water when they worked the coal, and when they were working the coal, the mines were pumped dry. But when they became disused, they filled up with water, which then became heated by naturally occurring geothermal processes, and leaves us today with an infrastructure that's like a reservoir, a heat battery effectively, that we can tap into.
And how big is this reservoir?
It's vast. So we've got 23,000 disused coal mines across the UK, and we've got around about 25% of the built environment is located on the coal fields.
Now that's the sort of geology of the physics. How do we go from that to actually realising the potential of this for helping to heat homes and businesses, Richard?
So I think a number of things. We've got a very specialist team which is engaging with local authorities, private companies and businesses, looking at opportunities within the coal fields. We actually have the coal mining archives with mine plans going back to 1892. So we have everything mapped out. One of the things that we're doing is looking at how cost effective they are.
Well, talk me through the issues there. What is it that maybe makes them expensive, or what makes them cheap on the other hand? What are you looking for?
One of the things is, because this is a geothermal source, to access the water, you potentially have to drill your own boreholes to access the workings. The Coal Authority own all of the workings and the coal reserves on behalf of the UK. That is an upfront expense that you get. Alternatively, one of the things that we do is we treat the mine water.
We perhaps need to explain that a bit, why mine water needs treating. I gather that in some places it's because it can become toxic and then flow out and pollute. So that's a sort of an ongoing headache for the Coal Authority that you're treating anyway.
That's right. So it gets full of something called iron ochre. And our mine water treatment schemes take that iron ochre out.
But your point is that for some of those, you're already pumping this water up, so let's use the heat within it.
Absolutely.
So Charlotte, we've got this one in Gateshead. What's under development at the moment? Actual projects that could be coming on stream soon to use the warmth of the coal water?
So we've probably got a pipeline of 30 or 40 or so projects.
But money is the key, isn't it? Because a lot of these energy sources, yeah, you can do the physics, say you can do them, it's there, but it's whether they're economically viable to do it. What kind of drives the economic viability?
Things like the cost of drilling, the cost of electricity, obviously that's a key thing. There's a lot of subsidies on electricity, and you need those to drive the heat pumps, so that's an important factor. There's the demand profile, what's your usage like? The more you use these things, the better, the more value you can get back off them. So there's a whole range of factors you need to consider.
Richard, I wonder how it feels for an energy resource that was controversial, which ended with considerable bitterness, to be having a sort of new life in our green energy future.
I think that's one of the great stories about it, that you are getting clean energy from the coal fields, and the chance to re-engage with those communities on the heritage legacy that they had. And for us as the Coal Authority, taking something that we've probably managed as a legacy for the last 30 years and now turning this into something that's a real asset for the future.
Well, yeah, moving from liability to asset, potentially.
Absolutely. We employ, a number of people that were involved in the mining industry, and I think for them they can see, the real positivity around that this is looking forward.
And how does it feel to you personally, Charlotte?
Well, it's amazing. It's something I've been wanting to do for probably around about 20 years. When I started working on mine water treatment and taking lots of samples, realising the water was warm and saying we could use this as a heat source. And back then we had access to cheap gas and there weren't the climate drivers there are today. So I think everyone thought I was a bit crazy, but now it's definitely having a moment.
Well, that is the sound being made by the mine water actually being pumped out. Just here they've got one of the manhole covers off and you can see the big blue pipes and the classic sort of big valve wheels about half a metre or so across. And it's flowing from here into a building that has a heat exchanger in it. Across to this building here. This is where the heat exchanger, the heat pump if you like, is housed, and it's a maze of stainless steel piping, ducting, insulating jackets and collars, dials, valves, etc. And there's a door I actually can't go through here. I'm not allowed to because one of the chemicals they're using to help with the heat exchanging is ammonia, and that can be very explosive, so I'm not allowed in there. But this is where they take the heat from the mine water and with the help of a heat pump they raise the temperature of water to around 80 degrees. In fact, I can see a dial over here next to the pipes that are actually going out to the neighbourhood, and it says 79.13 degrees. That's going out to warm homes and businesses nearby. I think it's really interesting that this part of England that's so well known for its industrial past, livelihoods here were built on powering the country using coal, and now in a different way those same mines, those same shafts and miles of tunnels underground could be powering our future. At the moment just 350 households are benefiting from this mine water heating, but the potential is so big because in effect of our industrial history. So many of our towns and cities grew up around coal mines and the associated industry. So the Coal Authority reckons that, 1/4 of households in the UK, that's 6 million homes, are in effect above coal mines, could possibly be eligible for this type of heating. We're feeling our way on Simon. All right. There aren't any working deep coal mines left in the UK, so to get a better understanding of how boreholes and an energy centre, but they definitely think it's worth it. Councillor John McElroy is the Environment and Transport Lead from Gateshead Council. How does it feel? There's almost a kind of renaissance here from what was a dirty energy source to a cleaner one.
Personally, I feel great because my father was a miner. He actually created some of these mine workings himself. And he realised it was a dirty occupation which didn't really have a long-term future. So what we're able to do now is build upon that and use it for modern-day energy, green energy revolution, which will power our economy.
That's really interesting, especially because of the slightly anguished way the whole era of mining ended, and coal was sort of condemned. That in effect, some good has now come of it.
Yeah, it did end in a very bad way, I think. But I think what we're able to do now is turn that into something good, which is something which will power the green revolution.
So why did you do it here?
Well, we did it for several reasons. It's great for the environment that we're using a natural source of heat, but also it works out economically as well. Great for the customer who's getting good value energy.
Yeah. So there are some pipes coming up from below. They're obviously not breaking the surface, but are they flowing off to somewhere?
They're flowing over to a building just over there, where the heat pump is, where the heat pump actually takes out the heat from the water and puts it into another network, and that's distributed right around this part of Gateshead. We've got factories, we've got offices, we've got people's homes, shops, benefiting from the natural heat.
Now, the most obvious visual thing here is that you're in the middle of a solar farm. Is this just coincidence, or is the solar farm relevant to this?
It's relevant because we're using that electricity at times to actually power the heat pump. So at times we're totally carbon neutral.
How many homes or businesses are you doing currently with this?
We've got around about 300 homes connected, and businesses are probably talking about several dozen.
What do customers say to you about it, and what effect is it having on their bills?
Well, a lot of customers obviously don't notice a difference, but what we have guaranteed within our bills is a security, and we're offering prices which are lower than the gas alternative. So what we want to build is customer confidence in this new green technology and deliver them something which is very much value for money.
How big a chunk out of the sort of carbon emissions for heating do you think it could take in an area like this?
Well, it's only part of the mix, I must admit. There's other things like potentially heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, domestic heat pumps, hydrogen, they're all part of the mix. Horses for courses, if you like, but I think this is important. District heating schemes are, not very prominent in this country so far. We think that there's great scope for them throughout the country, and actually mine water must play an important part in actually being part of that.
So while this is a greener solution, is it a cheaper solution? Now that matters here because 14% of households in the old mining town of Gateshead live in poverty. So the opportunity to have a cheap, lower carbon source of heating is incredibly important. Now, the mine water system is guaranteed to keep bills 5% below the price of gas heating. Not enormous, but clearly better than nothing. And one of the advantages is that you can have this kind of heating in your home, this lower carbon heating, without any disturbance to your home itself and without any cost to the householder. In fact, some of the people we spoke to who were going in and out of the social housing blocks here didn't even know that their heating was being powered this way. But it's not just households who are seeing the benefits. I've come to this extraordinary, iconic, sort of broad dome-like building called the Sage on the south side of the Tyne. And it's also home to the Glasshouse International Centre for Music. And I've caught up with Scott Morrison, who is environment lead here for this cultural hotspot.
We feel really lucky to be part of Gateshead District Energy Scheme. There's two reasons. One is it saves costs, can often be about 5% cheaper than getting power from the grid. And the other reason is for carbon savings. We've got a 2030 net zero target. And so the solar power and the mine water heat pump really helps us as we move towards that ambition.
I think the potential of this warmer mine water to transfer some of its energy to heat our homes in a lower carbon way is big, but it won't be without considerable investment. It needs connecting to heat networks. These giant local plumbing systems where the actual hot water comes to your home rather than an electrical wire to run an electric heater or a gas pipe to run a gas boiler. These so-called district heating systems are quite common in continental Europe, but they're not that common here in the UK. And whilst, as I said, it doesn't involve much disruption to the householder, there is quite a lot of infrastructure that's needed to actually put these pipes below ground. A lot of digging up roads and pavements and that kind of thing. So it doesn't necessarily come in cheap. But it's an interesting solution, especially for blocks of flats, which don't necessarily work with individual property heat pumps and things like that. And like we hear so often when it comes to low-carbon solutions, there isn't a one-size-fits-all policy that's going to be brilliant for decarbonising our heating across every home in the UK. This could be a very good fit in some of our towns and cities, especially those above coal workings and especially those who think they could build a heat network. Well, that's it for this week's episode, produced by Emma Ray Woodhouse and Gemma Watson. If you're left wanting more, why not scroll back and listen to some of our other episodes, such as Are Heat Pumps Worth It? And Could a Scotch Egg Help Solve Climate Change? Tasty, huh?